What's up, everybody? It's Zach the Celtics guy here. I'm back with another video, and it's time for one of those legal lessons videos that I haven't done in quite some time because I've been busy doing other things and just been busy filling this channel up with a bunch of live streams and other content I've been doing. So with that, as you probably saw my Hunter Avalon destruction video, it's time to talk about some legal lessons and some laws that I support and have written for the Pogo Islands. You know, my country, the Pogo Islands, my fictional country that I make my laws in, and it's a country that I made and I formed the Pogo Islands in South Asia in the Indian Ocean, and it's a place that I created like a tropical country with a tropical rainforest and with its own laws, with 16 islands having their own laws. And how the laws would be if it was up to me. If the law was up to me, that's how I would have it. But today I want to talk about what I think the laws should be on certain crimes. And I'm going to get into that. And I'm going to get into that right now here, right on this channel. Zach's Legal Lessons, and I don't even know what episode this is because this is probably like episode 9 or 10. We'll just say, yeah, it turns out it's episode 9. Okay. Because my last video was on these legal lessons was 3 months ago. Jesus Christ. So yeah, that's how long it's been. So my last one was about how I believe that a person who drives over 100 miles an hour on any street, roadway, or highway, regardless of the speed limit, even in the 70-mile-an-hour zone, should have their license automatically revoked and confiscated and their vehicle forfeited at the roadside for a minimum period of 1 year, unless a longer period exists under another law provided elsewhere, like for DUI, DWI, fleeing the police, driving while revoked or suspended, street racing, stunt driving, you name it. So with that, now I'm going to talk about what I believe the penalties for 3 specific violent crimes are. They all fall into the same category. They all fall into assault. Now, I generally think that even assault should be punished very severely. It's not just like, you know, now see, it's like assault and battery. Like assault is like when you grab someone by the arm and you try to pull them, but you don't injure them. That's assault. But if you hit someone and you cause them injury, that's assault and battery. And with that should get like, depending on the severity of the injury, I think should get like 20, 30 years in prison. Even more if the injury is permanent. Which brings me to my next point. Whereas like a simple assault maybe should be like, I don't know, a few months to a year maybe, depending on your record. I don't know. Maybe put them on probation for 4 or 5 years, whatever, you name it. But that's what I think. So now the laws on the Indigo Island with regards to the Commonwealth of the Pogosian Indigo Island on mayhem, torture, and cannibalism. Now, we're probably going to be talking about some graphic things here. So this video might contain some graphic material. So if you're eating, or if you're either eating and or you have a sensitive stomach, that's what this video is about. So just warning you ahead of time. Video discretion recommended. So anyway, the crime of mayhem is a crime where you deliberately maim, disable, or disfigure someone's body part or cause them grievous bodily injury with intent to permanently injure them. It's like the equivalent of cutting or slicing someone's eye, nose, ear, or their throat, or you twist someone's arm or their leg, or you amputate someone's body part, or you could be just anything like that. The penalties for mayhem on the Indigo Island vary depending on the degree. Second-degree mayhem is what we call simple mayhem. That's if you cause someone a long-lasting injury that's not permanent, but is not minor either, and was committed with intent to maim, disable, disfigure, or cause grievous bodily harm to another person. With that, you face a minimum of 5 years in prison and a maximum of 30 years in prison and a fine up to $250,000. 250,000 Pogosian dollars. And that will count as a count on your record. Under count to 3, there will not be a 4 law. That's basically, you're convicted 3 times of 3 separate violent felonies, you'll serve a minimum 30 years to life in prison. That's what I believe in. Or at least that, or the death penalty, depending on your record, or depending on how severe your felonies are. If it's like a second or third of the most severe offense, like rape, kidnapping, arson, or whatever, then I think death or life in prison should be applied on the second count. But hey, that's just me. And that's my laws for specific islands, including the Indigo Island and Cerulean Island. But anyway, that's second-degree mayhem. Now when you get into causing someone a permanent injury or permanent disability, disfigurement, deafness, or blindness, or you rob someone of an internal organ or limb or body part. That's first-degree mayhem on the Indigo Island. That's a permanent injury. The penalty for that, what I would provide for that, is imprisonment in the island's prison for a mandatory term of life, which cannot be reduced or altered under any law whatsoever. So that means that if you're convicted, you face life in prison, and it's mandatory. It should be a mandatory life sentence. If you cause someone a life sentence, you basically cause that victim a life sentence by literally destroying their life and deafening or blinding or disabling someone and destroying their life. Then yeah, I think in turn for that, you should end up in prison for life. And whether or not you are up for parole, the Indigo Island reviews. This is the Pagosian Indigo Island. Every island's different. There's some islands where life in prison means life. But on the Indigo Island, if it's an indeterminate sentence, so if it says punishable with imprisonment in the island prison for life with the possibility of being released. That's what it says under the Indigo Island Code of Statutes, Title 7, Indigo Island Criminal Code, Section 47A. That states that first-degree mayhem is punishable by imprisonment in the island's prison for life with the possibility of being released, which is mandatory and cannot be reduced or altered under any law, and a maximum fine of $500,000. So that means that that's called mayhem with aggravated circumstances. So if the injury is permanent or long-lasting, or if it's permanent or just absolutely devastating or catastrophic, then imprisonment for life is mandatory, and a $500,000 fine is possible. That's what I think you should. And it's okay, like, oh, how could someone afford $500,000? Well, they're not going to. They'll end up just paying it off in prison for the rest of their life, or pay it off on parole for the rest of their life. And their case is reviewed by the Indigo Island Parole Board after serving 10 years. But that could be extended for every 7 years after that. You could be released after 10 years minimum, or they could extend it for an additional 7 years, if not every 7 years after that, up to the rest of the person's life. But that means that you can be sentenced to life with no parole for first-degree mayhem on the Indigo Island, because that's what I believe in. Do I believe in life without parole for first-degree mayhem? The answer is yes. If you cause someone if the injury was absolutely just catastrophic or devastating, then that's when I would say life with no parole would be absolutely appropriate. You should spend the rest of your life in prison. If you cause someone a permanent injury or disability, you basically ruin someone's life. And you have no regard for innocent human life, just a flagrant disregard for the safety and psychological and physical well-being of another human being. And for that, you should serve the rest of your life in prison. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it should be out of the realm of possibility. I think you should serve the rest of your time behind bars for life. No, never getting out. That's what I think. And I don't know, I'm mixed about it. It depends. If, like I said, anything worse than the conviction, or if the injury was particularly gruesome, brutal, or catastrophic, then yeah, I think that should absolutely preclude the possibility of getting parole at any point. So if you permanently destroy someone's life, you in turn should spend the rest of your life in prison. I think that's totally justified. Spend the rest of your life in prison and pay a fine of $500,000 off for the rest of your life. That's how the Indigo Island does it for first-degree mayhem. And if the injury is not permanent, you still face minimum 5 years up to a maximum of 30 years. When it comes to first-degree mayhem with aggravated factors, a life term is mandatory. And depending on how severe the injury is, life without parole is possible. And a $500,000 fine is possible. And now let's get to the next one, torture. Torture is when you inflict pain and suffering by an act of violence, sadism, or revenge on someone with intent to extort or inflict pain on someone with intent to extort them or to gratify someone's sadistic desire with intent, with a malicious intent, and with the intent. And the penalty for that, mandatory life in prison and a $500,000 fine. That's the penalty for torture on the Indigo Island. Like, torture is just an even worse form of mayhem. Well, it doesn't even have to involve an injury. It could just be waterboarding someone or choking someone with a rope or choking them somehow. Well, that would be called disabling with intent to commit an indictable offense under the Old English common law. But torture is just an infliction of a serious act of violence with intent to extort money or to extort or to get revenge at someone or to facilitate another violent crime or flight thereafter. And with that, what should the penalty be for torture? Life in prison. Maybe minimum 10 years, depending. But for that, you're probably never going to be released for torture, because torture is literally one of the worst crimes committed against another human being. It is an extremely serious crime. Torture is an extremely serious crime. And with that, that's why I punish it by life in prison and a $500,000 fine, as it should. Torture, one of the worst crimes against another human being. You're basically inflicting pain and suffering on someone with intent to furtherance of another act of violence. So with that, yes, life in prison, definitely. And whether or not they should get parole, in most cases, no. In most cases, no. No. It's too severe of a crime. I think a person convicted of torture, one of the worst crimes against another human being, literally a crime against the life and humanity of another person, and is literally a crime under international law and international humanitarian law. Yeah, you should spend the rest of your life in prison for that and pay a fine up to $500,000 for the rest of your life. So that's that. Now we get to the worst crime of all out of these three, cannibalism. I think we're all familiar with what cannibalism is. Cannibalism is when you literally, don't mean to be graphic, when you eat someone. Well, here's how I define cannibalism on the Indigo Island. Cannibalism is when you bite into, you don't even have to consume anything. It's literally just biting into the flesh or body part of another human being with intent to inflict pain and suffering or to maim, disable, or disfigure. It's literally just an aggravated form of mayhem. Cannibalism is the worst crime of all of these, and it's probably the worst kind of assaultive crime you could commit against another human being. So, the penalty for cannibalism is also mandatory life in prison on the Indigo Island. So if you're convicted of cannibalism on the Indigo Island, chances are, under my jurisdiction, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. Maybe you'll get parole if you get an indeterminate term of imprisonment of life. Life in prison is mandatory for cannibalism. It's also mandatory for torture and first-degree mayhem, as I said earlier. You should spend the rest of your life in prison. It's a crime that destroys lives. It's literally one of the worst crimes committed against another human being. It's literally just mayhem involving biting into the flesh or blood of another human being. It's despicable. It's despicable beyond... It's just sick, twisted, and disgusting beyond a whole nother level. And with that, someone convicted of a crime that gruesome and that severe, I think chances are you should keep them in prison for the rest of their life. The maximum fine for cannibalism is 1 million Pogosian dollars. That'd be like selling off your house while you're in prison and paying that off with $1 million fine for the rest of your life. Because chances are you're never going to be released from prison. So with that, yes, you should serve the rest of your time behind bars for life and never get out. You should never see the light of day. If you're convicted of any of these crimes that involve destroying people's lives and have victims, and you're literally destroying people's lives, destroying their physical and psychological well-being, you're ruining lives. So with that, you should spend the rest of your life in prison, or at least at the bare minimum, in the best case scenario, decades upon decades upon decades, like 30 years to life. Minimum. That's me. Now, felony murder. If you commit any of these crimes or any other severe crime of violence and someone dies, even if it was unintentional, that's felony murder. What do I think the penalty for felony murder should be? 30 years to life in prison, life without parole, or death. In the most extreme cases, The Indigo Island does have capital punishment. All Pagosian jurisdictions have capital punishment. So, in most extreme cases, death by hanging. So, that's pretty much what I have to say, and this is my topic, and this is Zach's legal lessons based out of the Pogo Islands. Another proposal of mine, and I'm going to do more of these videos going forward, but I wanted to do that before my stream later this evening, so I wanted to do that, and hope you guys enjoyed this. And for those of you who know about my Pogo Islands, like many of you do, Steven, my friends, Howling Wolf 94, my best friend in both real life, online and offline, and just in general throughout my life. And my other friends and my fans on here, y'all know about the Pogo Islands and my creation. These are my laws and how I would create them in a country if it was up to me. And this is another example of that. And this concludes episode 9. Thank you all for everybody who was listening. Hope you all enjoyed. And I will copy and paste all of these and put them in the description when I get around to that. Thank you to everybody who stopped by. More stuff like this on the way, more videos, content, other stuff in the works. See y'all again in the stream coming up this evening, and more stuff on the way. This is Zach the Celtics guy saying thank you for watching another episode of Zach's Legal Lessons, and I'll see y'all again next time. Be safe and be well. Peace out.